on the list that she gave me yesterday.
That's an excellent one.
Okay, she said that the Adjustment Bureau, and Sister Joyce said the Book of God. You can get that from Amazon. Because I didn't know whether you had gotten that information. I was going to share that with you anyway, but I'm glad I said that and you gave me They Live.
The Book of God, you talking about the one by Dr. Wesley?
I don't know. It must be. She talked about it on our MGT. I think it is by Dr. Wesley.
Oh yeah, that's a powerful book.
Okay, the Book of God. She said I can get it from Amazon. Okay.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I got people still coming in.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Lukman. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum. I meant to say that.
Alaikum salam.
Okay.
Well, family, let's go ahead and open up in prayer, attention prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Surely I am being turned to the O Allah, trying to be upright. To him who originated the heavens and the earth, and I'm not of the polytheists. Surely my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, and my death are all for Allah, Lord of the worlds. No associate has he, this am I commanded, and I am of those who submit. O Allah, thou art the King, there is no God but thee. Thou art my Lord, and I am thy servant. I have been greatly unjust to myself, and I do confess my faults. Please grant me protection against my faults, for none grants protection against faults but thee. And guide me to the best of morals, for none can guide to the best of morals but thee. Please turn away from me the evil and indecent morals, for none can turn away from me the evil and indecent morals but thee. O Allah, bless Muhammad, and bless the true followers of Muhammad. As thou didst bless Abraham and the true followers of Abraham, for surely thou art to be praised and magnified. O Allah, make Muhammad successful and make the true followers of Muhammad successful. As thou didst make Abraham successful and the true followers of Abraham successful, for surely thou art to be praised and magnified. Ameen.
Ameen.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who came to us in the person of Master Farrakhan Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever. I bear witness that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the exalted and living Christ, and now Mahdi at his right hand. And I bear witness that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is our Messiah in this day of judgment in which we now live. It is in their names that I greet my family with the greeting words and peace and paradise. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
It's a blessing and an honor to be before you. I had mentioned earlier, the brothers and sisters from Closing the Gap, they came in through gangbusters. It's like they broke through the door about 5 minutes before the meeting started.
Praise is due to Allah.
Yes, sir. Dear family, before we get started, let's deal with old business first, if there's any, and then we'll get into the new topic. Do any of the brothers and sisters from last week have any questions? And do any of the brothers and sisters who are new to the group today, do you have any questions before we get started?
No, sir.
All right, I'm still entering people in here. Okay, then we will go ahead and get started. Dear family, if you could, please put your email in the chat if you would like to receive more information. We do this every Sunday from 6 to approximately 7:30. And on Wednesday mornings, and we will probably be doing an evening class sometime during the week, we actually get involved in just straight mathematics, from arithmetic up to calculus. And we learn how to apply it to go through our problem book And then we actually start to break down some of these mathematical equations that we've been given. As of right now, that's Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. For brothers and sisters who are interested in learning mathematics and cannot make the morning class, I will be more than happy to do an evening class. The way my schedule works, I work a 24-hour shift and I have 3 days off. So I have a lot of leeway with my schedule. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy teaching mathematics. And if we don't learn the mathematics, then how can we start breaking down the problem book? So I want to make myself available to any of the brothers and sisters who are interested. I will post my email again. Just inform me of what level of mathematics you either already have a background in or you're interested in learning. And then I'll do whatever I can to the best of my ability to rearrange my schedule so we can actually start getting into the mathematics. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Let me see here. Over here. Now, me personally, I like working with PowerPoints. I've been blessed to be involved in the prison ministry since around 2000, 2001. And one thing you have to learn about prison ministers, we can run our mouth for a long period of time. And oftentimes we might run off on a tangent and forget what we're even talking about. So I like using PowerPoints because they help me stay focused. And it also allows people the opportunity to, if we move a little too fast and you can't take notes, just let me know and I'll be more than happy to send these PowerPoints to you. This first slide is just a thought that came to mind as I was traveling yesterday. And it kind of like harmonizes, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan tells us, the supreme wisdom with the supreme technology. And then as I was driving and thinking, I realized that the Most High Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan revealed to me the devil on the outside and the God within. L. Ron Hubbard revealed to me the various gods on the outside and the multitude of devils within. And this is how we harmonize the two schools of thought. This is how we harmonize and marry the supreme wisdom with the supreme technology. If I start to move a little too fast, please just raise your hand. I don't mind slowing down. The topic today is the concept of the two minds warring inside of me. This statement is actually taken from the Bible. In both the book of James and the book of Romans, it talks about these two minds that are warring inside of me. This is a major concept when we get into the science and the technology of Dianetics. In Dianetics, well, let me ask this question. Are there any members of the group that have not started the Dianetics technology of the book lessons? Is there anyone that has not started it, or is there anyone that's currently involved in the study of Dianetics? Or maybe I should ask, is there anyone that has not started the study of Dianetics? Okay. Well, I pray after tonight, we might begin our study. Let me move this back down here. So in the study of the Dianetics, there's three parts of the mind. There's what's called the analytical mind, there's the reactive mind, and then there's what's called the somatic mind. The two key components we want to talk about tonight is the analytical mind and the reactive mind. But we're going to hit it from a different perspective. The one thing we have to understand is that the study of Scientology, specifically the study of Dianetics, that has been kind of brought into the spotlight by Mr. L. Ron Hubbard And this presentation is in no way to take away from his work, because myself and I know the brothers and sisters who are part of the group, we have a great deal of respect for L. Ron Hubbard and Dianetics. Me personally, I have been studying since 2011, and I'm grateful and thankful for it. But the thing we want to understand and get through is that this wisdom is actually based on the wisdom of the original man. So when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has said that this belongs to us, it belongs to us. So now we're just getting reacquainted to this technology of Dianetics and getting reacclimated to it. This wisdom has always been present, yet has been hidden in the language of symbolism. So we're going to deal with some symbolism with regards to our ancestors. We're going to deal with some symbolism with regards to different religions to show that these truths that are present, that take us into the higher understanding and the higher realms of this science of the mind, has its point of origin in the mind and in the teachings of the original Black man and woman. But we also understand that he deserves credit, meaning L. Ron Hubbard, for his analysis, his codification, and representation of our ancient wisdom in a modern context. So we can never take that from him for the work that he has done to manifest this to us. So the study of Dianetics, this provides an up-to-date explanation of the modern equipment and analysis of the human mind and its components. So when you look at problem number 31 in our problem book, it states the modern equipment. I've heard many believers refer to Dianetics as the modern equipment that allows us to move even faster along the lines of growing into God. And I think I remember someone stating that the minister has stated, or someone, one of the officials had stated that the Dianetics, along with the supreme wisdom, will allow us to grow into God even faster. Dianetics also provides the methodology of how to correct this internal conflict. That's the major focus we want to deal with tonight, is our internal conflict. That's the major factor that's keeping us from manifesting the wisdom that's contained in the supreme wisdom and in the teaching of the Most High Elijah Muhammad. So this session tonight is designed to provide the information and to give insight into this conflict within the mind and how it's been represented in other religious scriptures. Now we might ask ourselves the question, why are we talking about other religions? We want to show agreement with, we're gonna deal with something that was given to us by our Savior, Master Farrakhan Muhammad. We're gonna use as a foundation, a statement, a quote coming from the Most High Elijah Muhammad. And we're gonna present some information given to us by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And this is the foundation upon which we're going to stand, not only every night, but especially tonight. So here I got to unshare for a quick second and go to a different, let me go here. And then let me go here. Where are you at? Oh, that's not it. Give me 1 second. Here you are. Does everyone see the YouTube video?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Please. I found something here. That I know we need, that would enable us to express the supreme wisdom that we already have, but it's like having a safe full of riches, but we lost the combination. So through Brother L. Ron Hubbard, we can open the wisdom that we have and execute that wisdom in a way that Scientology will be proud of us and we of them. But we are not a people that hide our light under a bushel basket. If we know that we gain something here, we're not the type of people that are ungrateful for what we receive that allows us to be better than what we are. I believe that Master Farad Muhammad knew that a meeting was going to take place like this. I don't know whether he met Brother L. Ron Hubbard, but I believe there was some contact. Scientists are like that. They meet in small little groups and they talk. And when they share with one another, they grasp little truths that they expand on. Yes. There's something here that belongs to us. And L. Ron Hubbard was a man we were destined to meet at the proper time. So when you mention, washing feet, I sat there with tears in my eyes because the greatest gift that I could give you was to give you that which would make you what you know you already are. You understand? Yes. And if you don't, think about what I'm saying. The greatest gift that you could receive after the supreme wisdom is the technology that will allow you to manifest it. And that technology is here. I discovered it, and I wanted you to see what I saw, hear what I heard, feel what I felt, so that you wouldn't be timid or afraid of knowledge that will help us to be ourselves. And so I invited you. And as I watched you relate to each other tonight, I said every believer in the nation needs what you experienced in this week. Nobody can lead in our nation until and unless they become clear. Are you with me? We have no school of theology. We just study the word and do the best we can, but the time is out for that. Everybody has to be qualified to have a position or post in the Nation of Islam. Master Farrakhan said the Nation of Islam is all wise and does everything right and exact. Mistakes shall not exist in the nation. Meaning they'll be made, but you wipe them out by doing better. So I am grateful that you came. And now, as I see my time is coming, whatever that may mean to you, if I could leave you with a science and a technology that will open up the wisdom that you have quoted for years. But when you look at accomplishment, wisdom is known of its children. It's not what you say, it's what you can produce. So I hope, as Brother Shane had said, that this is not an end, this is a beginning, I pray, of a long and beautiful relationship. L. Ron Hubbard would be proud at this moment. And as I sat listening to you, I said, we need to go back to Chicago and set up a training center where we can bring all those who would want to be a part of this mission into Chicago, like they do at their Mecca in Florida, and teach them and train them and then send them out with qualifications to do the job of the resurrection of our people. Man, I gotta go now, but I tell you, I hope that you all have a safe flight tomorrow. In fact, I think you'll be flying without a plane. Can't wait to get home to go to work. And I can't wait until everyone who wants to labor in this cause goes through what you just went through this week. And I'm just grateful to all. May Allah bless you.
Praise be to Allah. Does anyone have any questions up to this point? No questions?
Yes, sir, Brother Lukman.
Yes, Sister Tina.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Yes, sir. Can that tape, that little clip be made available to us so we can have it?
That's right on YouTube.
Right on YouTube.
Yes, ma'am. If you go to YouTube and type in Farrakhan and Dianetics and scroll down, that video is actually off of YouTube.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Anyone else before we continue?
I'll just say one thing, and not long.
No, go ahead. Take your time, sister.
When I look at the minister, he came so we could understand. Now I'm looking at his little helpers, like you and Brother Baton, giving us more knowledge. And I say this because, you know, I went in Scientology when the nation broke up. So you're giving me more affinity for something I've already studied, some of it, not everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I want to say.
Praise be to Allah. That's what we're here for. Anyone else? Okay, let's keep going. Where am I here? So tonight, our learning objectives. We're going to provide a foundation for the study of various religions and their scriptures. And we're going to show ARC between the key concepts found in various religions and their scriptures, Dianetics, and the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And for those who don't know, ARC simply means affinity, reality, and communication, which is another way of having agreement on 3 different levels. The basis is based on this quote from Message to the Black Man. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says on page 90, if you desire to preach or teach that a certain religion is true or right, you should know all religions and their scriptures. And then if we go to our wants and beliefs, it says we believe in the Holy Quran and in the scriptures of all the prophets of God. There's another ayat from the Holy Quran that states that Allah has given to every people their ways of devotion. So what we want to do tonight is we want to look at Dianetics, and we want to compare this to some of the other religions. And we're just going to hit brief little points because there's so much information just on this one point. We could literally be here for days. But we're going to hit just a few points on some of the major Eastern religions and show some unity between the concepts, and then show that what we have received is the fulfillment of all of those scriptures. And we're going to prove it with what we have tonight. Rule number 3 in our 13 rules of instruction says, what is meant by the laborer's answers to all lessons in the past, present, and future being perfect is that we must know and be able to prove at all times to the new converts that the lessons that our Savior Allah gave us to study and learn is the fulfillment of the prophecies of all the former prophets concerning the beginning of the devils and the ending of the civilization and of our enslavement by the devils and present time of our delivery from the devils by our Savior Allah, praise his name. Now, there's an interesting pattern that's in rule number 3, and is what is called in Dianetic language a cycle of action. First of all, we want to pinpoint and we want to clear this term right here. What is the meaning of fulfillment? Who are the former prophets that we'll be speaking about? And here's the cycle of action here. How do devils begin? How are we enslaved by the devils? How are we to be delivered from the devils? And how will the devil's civilization end? So those last 4 in Dianetic terminology is called a cycle of action. Start, change, and stop. We want to deal with how devils begin, how we fall victim to the devils, how we're delivered from the devils, and how will this whole thing come to an end. Now, if we look at the term devils, how is this term used in the language of Dianetics? Basic human character was found to have been pillared because man had not been able to distinguish between irrational conduct derived from poor data and the irrational conduct derived from another far more vicious source. Then he says, if there ever was a devil, he designed the reactive mind. So the reactive mind is the part of us that causes us to do the things that we don't have a desire to do. This is the part of the mind that is like the whispering of the slinking devil of Surah 114. That voice in our head that's constantly trying to get us to away from right to go to wrong. In the Dianetics terminology, this is called the reactive mind. This is the mind which makes a man suppress his hopes, which holds his apathies, which give him irresolution when he should act and kills him before he has begun to live. If there ever was a devil, he invented it. So when we have a great idea, when Allah gives us a great idea, whether it's to write a book, to start a business, to go into business for ourselves, to manufacture a product, whenever Allah blesses us with an idea that will manifest the greatness that's in ourselves, there's another voice that comes behind it that says, no one's gonna listen to you. No one's gonna buy your book. No one cares about your product. Now, has anyone here ever experienced that? Just raise your hands if you've ever experienced that little voice that keeps us from becoming the great people that we are destined to become. Everyone's raising their hand. That's how it should be, because this happens to all of us. We have the potential to be great men and women, examples representing the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, but we have this internal conflict that keeps deflating our dreams and removing our desires and placing doubt. And this keeps us, we remain being happy with mediocrity, in other words. Now here's Satan versus devil. In Closing the Gap on page 30, we're told that Satan is a devil maker. Satan is an arch deceiver who uses the skill and wisdom of right in a way to lead those who seek right into the doing of wrong. This is much different than a devil. That's from page 30. So when we're told that Satan is a devil maker, there's a relationship between Satan and the devil versus the reactive mind and an aberrated individual. So the Satan that is within ourselves is like the reactive mind. And when that reactive mind whispers to us and deceives us and tries to work to take us off of our straight path, then we become a devil. So here Satan represents the reactive mind that's in us. We become an aberrated individual. We become the devil. So the reactive mind in Dianetics and the aberrated mind in Dianetics is the same as the savage that's spoken of in our supreme wisdom. And we know a savage is one that has lost the knowledge of themselves and is living a beast life. That is an aberrated individual. That is the result of the reactive mind. So now going back to this again, we want to play a little substitution, and I'm gonna go a little deeper into the significance of the substitution. We're going to deal with a little mathematical theology tonight. But if you look at the statements, how do devils begin? How are we enslaved by devils? How are we to be delivered from the devils? And how will the devil civilization end? We've already shown that the word devil is related to the reactive mind, which would imply that it's related to what's called the engram. So then we can exchange the word devil for the word engram. So when we exchange these terms, then we would say, how do engrams begin? How are we enslaved by engrams? How are we to be delivered from the engrams, and how will the aberrated civilization end? So the scope of Dianetics is the same as the scope of Islam. It's just two sides of the same coin. Now, if we look at the word fulfillment, it means to realize and develop the full potentials of a person. So our supreme wisdom, our lessons, is the fulfillment of all the former prophets and their scriptures. So we want to study the Dianetics, but we want to use that as a tool so that we can go deeper into the wisdom that we already have. Because what we have is supreme wisdom, and supreme wisdom trumps Dianetics. Dianetics is a tool that we can use to get to these higher states, but the goal of the use of the Dianetics is not to stay at the Dianetics. The goal of Dianetics is to unlock our potential and our thinking so we can go into the supreme wisdom and the problem book and begin to crack the wisdom that we've already been given. In Closing the Gap, page 312, near the bottom of the page, I believe Brother Jabril Muhammad makes the statement that what we have received right now is the kindergarten of Master Farad Muhammad's knowledge. And we haven't even cracked the kindergarten knowledge yet. So the Dianetics is the tool that the minister has given us to crack open the supreme wisdom that we already have. This will develop the full potential of you and I. So the fulfillment means to convert into reality. It means to complete, to answer a purpose, to prove true. So what we have been given is designed to look at all the former prophets and all the religions and bring them up to the modern time. Bring through the religions of the world a modern day manifestation, a higher reality. Now, when we deal with the former prophets, the question could be asked, well, who are these former prophets and messengers? What scriptures did they bring? So if the Honorable Minister, the Most High Elijah Muhammad tells us that we have to study the religions and the scriptures, and this is part of the fulfillment of the lessons, then it would behoove us not only to be well-versed in our wisdom, but we should have a knowledge of the other religions so that we can speak the language of other individuals. I'll give one case in point. There was one day I was in one of the prisons when I was working as a chaplain representing the Nation of Islam in the state correctional facilities. And I was waiting for a brother that I was supposed to have a meeting with. And while I was waiting for him, I got into a conversation with a brother who was a Buddhist. So as we were speaking, Buddhism is a religion that I have a great deal of respect for, and I've done a pretty good amount of study on the religion. And there are many, many aspects of Buddhism that line up perfectly with our Islam and our teachings. So I was speaking to the brother about what's called the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, which is the foundation upon which Buddhism is grounded. And when the brother I was waiting for came into the office, he came in, he gave me the greetings. Assalamu alaikum. I said, wa alaikum salam. And the other brother who was the Buddhist stopped and he said, brother, you're a Muslim. I said, yes, sir. He said, I thought you were a Buddhist. I said, well, I am if you understand it. Because I understand, and there's an old saying that the truth is one, but the wise know it by many names. Now, I'm not trying to say I'm wise. I'm just quoting a statement. But there's only one truth that exists. But this truth can be told in many different ways. And that's what we're going to look at tonight. One truth presented from many different perspectives. So we want to look at, do these other scriptures have ARC with the teaching of the Most High Elijah Muhammad? So we're going to deal for a moment on the analytical mind and the reactive mind. So throughout history, there have been individuals that have been raised from many different people, from many different cultures, from many different time periods, and their purpose from being raised from their people is to guide their people back to the straight path. So when they were raised from specific groups of that culture, of that time period, they were given a wisdom that is one, that is eternal, and they used the language and the symbolism of the cultures from which they were raised. Allah tells us in the Holy Quran that in order to bring a message to a people, you have to speak the language of that people. So in the study of these faith traditions, we're going to find a common thread. There's a oneness that unites the spirit of these religious doctrines. And if we can look past the words, if we can go past the symbols and examine the underlying principles, we will discover what we can call a unifying factor. Now, we're going to prove this using mathematics. Minister Farrakhan gives us this principle in this example. He has said that, and I'm paraphrasing it, children can sit and argue, and one child might say, my mother says that 6 + 1 is 7. The other child might say, no, that's wrong. 5 + 2 is 7. Another child might say, well, both of you are wrong. 4 + 3 is 7. So the children are all saying the same thing. They're just saying it in a different way. But when we have a children's mentality, then we will continue to fight and kill one another over religious doctrine, instead of going to the root of what we say we believe in and realizing and understanding that we believe in the same thing. It's just that the truths of our individual faith traditions, the symbolism is different, but the underlying truth is the same. Does that all make sense? I see some heads nodding. Praise be to Allah.
Yes,
So
sir.
I want to pose a question. Based on what you see, does A equal B? Does A equal B? We have two different letters. Are they the same? Are they equal?
No.
No.
Okay. And we're saying no because of what? What reason are we saying no?
Shape.
Say again?
The shape.
The shape? Okay. What other reason are they not equal?
They're different.
Okay. That's fine.
That's fine. I say yes.
Yes, they the same.
Okay. Well, we
They
can't.
the same.
We
because
can.
both of
Go ahead.
them are alphabet. Both of them are alphabets.
Okay, both of them are alphabet. So we have on one hand someone saying A equals B, and we have on another hand saying A doesn't equal B. Well, now
I say A equals B too.
who's that's speaking? I can't see everyone.
This is Sister Tina.
Sister Tina,
I
okay.
A equals B because they're both on either side of the equal sign.
Okay. Well, we're gonna go a little deeper, and we're gonna use what we call our mathematical theology. In mathematics, you have what's called the law of substitution. But we're going to take this law that we find on the level of what's called algebra, and we're going to apply this law to a mathematical theology. So we could call this a theology of algebra, or an algebraic theology. So if I say, if 3 plus A equals 5, what does A equal?
2.
Okay,
2.
A equals 2. Okay. The step-by-step process we could use to solve this is you subtract 3 from both sides, and you want to get the unknown variable by itself. So when you get 3 minus 3 on this side, and then you get 5 minus 3 on the other side, it resolves to A equals 2. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. This is a basic principle. Now, if we say 7 plus B equals 9, what does B equal?
2.
It equals 2. We apply the same principle, subtract 7 from both sides, then B equals 2. Therefore, the conclusion for this particular example, A equals B. But what happens is, if we don't take the time to find out the unseen or the hidden aspect of these variables, we would think, based on an external perception, that these two are actually the same. Okay. So the law of substitution teaches us if A equals B, then I can substitute and still find the correct answer. So if I say, if 3 plus A equals 5, and we already know A equals 2, and if B equals 2, then I can substitute B into that first equation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, because what we're looking at is, we're not looking at the letter, we're looking at what the letter represents. The letter represents the seen, and the value is the unseen. So we're looking past the seen, and we're looking at what's hidden. We can do the same thing for 7 plus B, equals 9, since A equals 2 also, we can throw A into that equation and we'll still get the same result. Is everyone flowing with me so far? Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now here's the principle. Here's the principle behind this concept. Here's the lesson. The outward appearance of symbols can be different, yet the inward, the spiritual, the hidden, or what's called the esoteric meaning can be the same. So the outward appearance of reality is an illusion that has been used to cause the aberration, or another way is to cause our insanity, because we're getting caught up on what we see. We're not going past what we see into the unseen. So what we're doing is we're taking the same mathematical concept to find the truths that are contained within the symbols, and we're using this with regards to religious concepts. So what we're doing is, instead of using numbers, we're using beliefs or rules or concepts. We're using mathematics to prove spirituality. Does that make sense? Okay. So the goal is to provide a brief representation of the concept of the analytical and reactive mind found in Dianetics, and where these concepts are found in the ancient spirituality of the original man. So we're going to take the Dianetics, we're going to take the Islam that we have learned, and we're going to take some ancient context, and we're going to see how they're all one and the same. The only difference is what we have of our supreme wisdom is the fulfillment of all those spiritual concepts. So we're going to look at Scientology, and we know in Scientology, the main book we're dealing with is the Dianetics, even though there's many books on the bridge, on the basics. And we know that, Scientology was given to us by Mr. L. Ron Hubbard. We know we have our Islam. If many of us, if not all of us here, have either been raised in the church or we have been related to someone who was raised in the church. Then we have what's called the Moorish Science Temple, which was under the guidance of its founder, the Honorable Noble Drew Ali. And the religious text of the Moorish Science is called, I've heard it called the Circle 7 Quran, and it's also called the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Then we have a faith tradition called the Bahai. And from what I've seen up to this point, I mean, Bahai is a large religious organization, but not too many people, at least just in my small circle, know too much about it. It was founded around the 1850s by an individual by the name of Baha'u'llah. And one of the religious texts that's the foundation of the Baha'i faith is called the Kitab-i-Aqdas. And there's some information that I'll present that shows that there are certain beliefs of the Baha'i that line up perfectly with the teachings that we have received in the Nation of Islam. Then you have a faith called Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism is considered to be the oldest revealed religions, and the founder or the prophet of Zoroastrianism, they called him Zoroaster, but his real name was Zarathustra Spitama, and one of the texts that he presented was called the Gathas. I won't get into detail of the faith in this presentation, but when you read through the text of Zoroastrianism, the concepts that he presents, he calls good mind and bad mind. I mean, he literally says that there's two minds that war inside of us, and these minds are constantly going at it. And then he talks about a bridge that you have to cross over to get from one point to another. And I found it interesting that in the Gothas, it refers to a bridge. And when you deal with Scientology, they refer to going up the bridge. Then you have the faith called Hinduism. Now, the thing about Hinduism is, in the modern context, Hinduism is considered to be a polytheistic religion. However, if you read one of the religious books of the Hindu, which is called the Bhagavad Gita, when you read that book, it actually talks about that God is one, and God is and the essence of God is contained within. So when you go to the text of the Hindu faith, the text is in harmony with the beliefs of the other faith traditions, that God is single and God is within. But unfortunately, as all religions, over time, the individuals, when that prophet or the individual over that faith passes away, then we have the infighting and we have the worldliness that creeps in and then divides the faith into many different schools of thought. Then you have a faith called Shintoism, which is a dominant faith of the Japanese people. And when you go into aspects of the Shinto faith, they also speak about this war or the good mind and the bad mind, these two opposing forces that are contained within man. Taoism it has the same context. Sikhism is a religion that was founded by a man named Guru Nanak, and the religious text of the Sikhs is called the Guru Granth Sahib. And again, it's the same concept. It's just internal dialogue, internal conflict, this war that takes place within. We're going to deal in depth with what's called the Metu Neter, which is the science of the ancient, what they called ancient Egyptians, or we call the ancient Khemitic people, our ancestors. And while we're on that note, I'll say this one part. There are some scholars that believe that when Alexander conquered,
Excuse me.
who was this? I just heard someone pop in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, sir. I'm not sure if it's just me, but you're breaking up.
Can everyone hear me correctly?
I can hear you clearly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear just fine?
Okay, let me.
Okay.
All right.
Must be me.
In the history of Alexander conquering ancient Khemit or Egypt, there are some scholars that believe that the priests that maintained the wisdom of the ancient Egyptians fled and they went west to the areas of West Africa. And in West Africa, you have the areas of Mauritania, you have Mali. And during slavery, because the individuals that came from that area of Egypt were considered foreigners to the Western lands. And there are some scholars that believe that during the time of slavery, those that were indigenous to West Africa sold out those that were not originally from there, which would imply that some of the first individuals that went into slavery were those descendants of the ones that fled ancient Egypt. This further would imply that those that survived the Middle Passage, those that survived slavery, and those who are in this Zoom conference tonight, we could be representatives of the ancient Khemitic people, which would also imply that all that wisdom that our ancestors would have had back at that time prior to the decline of that civilization as we're taught, that was 50,000 years ago, this wisdom is contained in our genetic makeup, which would take us a step further, that the more we come into a knowledge of ourselves and the more we utilize the Dianetics and the supreme wisdom, the more we have the ability to unlock the wisdom that is contained in us. Does that make sense? Everyone good so far?
Yes, sir.
Praise be to
Yes,
God.
sir.
Yes, sir.
There was a doctor by the name of Dr. Mona Harrison, who was good friends with Mother Tainetta Muhammad. I was blessed to meet her back in 2003. And the one thing that she mentioned to me when we had she and I had this conversation, she stated that our DNA is locked up with molecules called histones. Histones are like little locks on the DNA that keeps the DNA from unrolling. And she said that if you look at the word histone, it's made up of two words, his and tone, which could be his tone or his sound. And she said that when we raise our mind up to the higher frequencies of thought, of spirituality, that our higher frequencies of thought actually unlock the DNA. This allows the DNA to unroll, and it allows the ancient wisdom that's contained in our genetic makeup to be made manifest. So this is one of the keys of the ancient Khemitic people and the possibility that we could be their descendants. And then we're going to touch briefly on the concept of Buddhism and these two minds. So we're going to see that these traditions, and we're not going to deal with all of them tonight, the time just would not permit it, but of the few that we're going to touch on, we're going to show how there's a oneness, a unity between these different religious schools of thought. So first, we're going to look at some aspects of Scientology.
Brother, when you get a point, I got to ask a quick question.
Oh, go right ahead, sister.
Okay, when we raise this frequency and we unlock this, you spoke early or at the beginning of our class when I said about the old movies. We're looking at things differently from most people with the third eye. Is this what you're referencing to as well?
Yes.
We're unlocking. Okay.
No, finish. Go ahead and finish your thought.
No, you answered that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, we are expanding our vision. We want to see more. There's three types of vision. There's one-dimensional, two-dimensional, and three-dimensional. Two-dimensional is just surface. It's just surface knowledge. I read somewhere, but unfortunately I can't remember where I read it at, and it said that the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is three-dimensional. It has length, it has width, and it has depth. So we want to take what we've received. We want to see length, width, height, and we want to see past, present, and future. So raising our thoughts to the higher frequencies, if you look at that from the perspective of Dianetics, we want to get to the higher levels of the tone scale. So that's the goal, to have our vision to go further, to see more deeply, and to see further, and to see with more detail. Then in Dianetics, he says the conscious mind in Dianetics is called by the somewhat more precise term, the analytical mind. Then he says the analytical mind is the portion of the mind which perceives and retains experience, data, to compose and resolve problems, and to direct the organism along the four dynamics. It thinks in differences and similarities. Now, based on that definition, what have we learned in the teachings that directs the organism with regards to the resolution of problems and with the ability to perceive? What have we been taught that parallels that? Someone try it.
Can you repeat the question, Brother Lukman?
Sure. The question is, if you look at this definition, what have we been taught in the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad that is in agreement with this statement? Meaning, what do we have within us that directs us and helps us to perceive and resolve problems?
Isn't that the atonement process?
Using spirit.
That's part of the process. We can accept that answer, but now let's get a little more specific.
The accusing spirit?
The self-accusing spirit. So the self-accusing spirit would have agreement with the analytical mind. So in Dianetics, as we evolve out of our aberrated thinking, we are gaining more of our analytical mind, which is the same as an increase in the power of our self-accusing spirit. And we know the self-accusing spirit, we were first given the explanation of that in the opening letter of the self-improvement speech. And we were told, we were given more detail in Surat al-Qiyamah, which is Surah number 75. So there is a marriage between the analytical mind and the self-accusing spirit. He says the reactive mind is the portion of the mind which files and retains physical pain and painful emotion and seeks to direct the organism solely on a stimulus response basis. It thinks only in identities. Now, up next to analytical mind versus reactive mind, you see the initials GE. In Dianetics, L. Ron Hubbard refers to the reactive mind, but then up in the book called A History of Man, where he starts talking about man's history going back 76 trillion years. Okay, where did he get that from? But he talks about 76 trillion years ago. And he starts talking about this thing called the genetic entity, which represents, if you understand it, the physical body, because the physical body is what's giving us our problems. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You know, if you don't remember, this is what was giving us problems just a couple of weeks ago during Ramadan. The genetic entity, the physical body wants water when it wants water. It wants food when it wants food. It wants bean pie when it wants bean pie. And we have to override the response of the body, the stimulus response, that when the stomach starts grumbling, we have to say, as Sister Ava said in the past, she says, you have to speak to your stomach. You have to say, peace be still, I am God. Then he says, it receives its data in terms of conviction delivered by force. It is directed by and reacts to hidden influences rather than observed influences, and is to a large extent the reverse image and reverse intention to the analytical mind. This we call the reactive mind. And this comes from the creation of human ability. Now, for us to kind of understand what they're saying is, let us go back before we came to the nation. And we can also look at us now, because none of us are perfect. And everyone in this room is wrestling with something. So we still have this entity, this whispering of the slinking devil in us that is constantly delivering force in us to do things that we have no business doing, even as little as eating twice a day, eating 3 times a day. Anything that's outside the alignment of what we have been given in the teachings. And since none of us are 100% yet, then we all still have this reactive mind applying force on us for us to do the things we have no business doing. And I'll use myself as an example. There are many days I leave the house before I go to work, and I say to myself, I'm gonna fast today. Now, one thing you have to understand about the fire department, people like to bring food to the firefighters. So when I get to work, my mindset is I'm gonna fast today. But then when I go into what we call the day room, where we have our meals and whatnot, and I see the cupcakes on the table and the homemade chocolate chip cookies, you know, now I'm at a crossroads. Do I continue to fast, or do I say, you know what, I'll use today as a cheat day and I'll start my fast tomorrow? So I'll be the first to admit that this GE and me, we do rounds just about every day, but all of us are going through this in our personal lives. The primary difference between these two minds is that one, the analytical mind, is without finite duration, meaning the analytical mind lasts forever. It's eternal. That's the God that is in us. And the other, which is called the reactive mind, is susceptible to death. That's on page 292. Now, when I came across this just reminded me of our lessons where it says, why does Muhammad and any Muslim murder the devil? Now, how many devils are we supposed to murder? Anyone?
4.
4 devils.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to murder 4 devils. Well, what does L. Ron Hubbard say? He says, proving this was very easy. In clearing every case, without exception, one or another of these demons were discovered. Some cases had 3 or 4. So now we have another agreement. We have another marriage of the supreme wisdom with the supreme technology. Our lesson says to kill 4 devils. Dianetics says on page 107 to try to clear these cases that have 4 demons. Demons and devil, we already know those 2 terms are synonymous. Then the kicker comes in a book called The Creation of Human Ability. He says the reactive mind comes into being as a servant of the analytical mind and is set up by the analytical mind to work upon and store data about the basic uncertainty that there might be something and there might be nothing. The reactive mind then continues in growth, and from the servant, if the analytical mind does not observe it, it tends to become the master. So if we don't gain strength with regards to our self-accusing spirit, which allows us to gain control over our physical body, then the physical body gains control over us. Does that make sense? A deeper explanation of this is if you go to Surah 75, read the introduction and read the first footnote, and it talks about 3 levels of nafs. Nafs is an Arabic word that means mind. You have the nafs amara, which is the animal mind.
I was getting ready to come by, didn't I?
You have nafs lawama, which is the self-accusing spirit. And then you have nafs muta'ina, which means the soul that is at rest or at peace with Allah. So there's a deeper explanation in Surah 75, which I won't go into depth with right here.
Honey, you know those.
Someone had a question? Okay. So now, can we find these same concepts in the other religions? Is everyone all right so far? Am I going too fast?
Yes, sir. We're okay. I'm okay.
Is it
Yes,
making,
sir. I'm okay.
I'm okay.
Is it making sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Praise
Yes, sir.
God. Now let's look at the Moorish Science. In the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, this is what it says. In chapter 3, Elihu's lesson, The Unity of Life, verses 5 through 16, it says there are 2 selves, the higher self and the lower self. The higher self is human spirit, clothed with soul, made in the form of Allah. The lower self, the carnal self, is the body of desires, is a reflection of the higher self, distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. The lower self is an illusion and will pass away. The higher self is Allah in man and will not pass away. That's the same way that it was described as the reactive mind. It then says the higher self is the embodiment of truth. The lower self is truth reversed, and so is falsehood manifest. The higher self is justice, mercy, love, and right. The lower self is what the higher self is not. The lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. The higher self is mother of the virtues and harmonies of life. Now, let me just take a quick hit on the second point. When it says the higher self is justice, mercy, love, and right, does that come, what comes to anyone's mind about those 4 characteristics?
Righteousness.
These are different aspects of righteousness. In Arabic, if you translate each of those words into Arabic, they actually represent 4 of the attributes of Allah. The 99 attributes are the characteristics of Allah, but these also translate on the Dianetic perspective, the upper levels of what's called the chart of human evaluations. So the upper level of the chart that was given in Science of Survival corresponds to the 99 attributes found in Islam. Now, when you look at the lower self that breeds hatred, slander, and lewdness, where do we find that in Dianetics? Anyone?
On the lower
Below
level of the tone scale.
Yes,
below
that's
2.0.
yes. I was about to say it. That's 2.0. That's 1.1, 1.5 on the tone scale. So what it says in the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science agrees with the Islam that we have received, and it also is in harmony with the Dianetics. So we have another marriage.
This brings to mind to ask a question. As we fast, I'm asking a question. As we fast, we're on a process to eliminate those lower tone activities, which is destructive to life. And we are on a road to our higher self when we do our fasting. Is that one of the processes for that we're doing in Islam?
Yes, and what you just did was you intuited something else that's about to come up in the same presentation. I'm going to actually go into that in a little depth. So yes, and I will explain the answer to that question with more detail in just a moment. But definitely thank you for that question. But it's right in sync with what we're doing.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So all of this is just giving a description of the higher self and the lower self. These are aspects of the tone scale. Now, keep in mind, when we're dealing with the tone scale, there is a verse in the Holy Quran where Allah says that you will know different people by the tone of their speech. So we can go into the Holy Quran and find ayats that will harmonize with the Dianetics. And just on a side note, on the Facebook page, Supreme Wisdom Meets Supreme Technology, what I'm going to begin doing is take the information that I've been collecting over the course of the past 4 years with regards to the concepts of Dianetics that we can find in the Holy Quran. And I'm going to start posting all this information on that Facebook page so that really the overall goal is for brothers and sisters that have not taken up the study of Dianetics. We want to inspire individuals that may have been a little hesitant and just maybe didn't fully understand. We want to harmonize the two concepts so we can be lockstep with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. That will be the Facebook page is called Supreme Wisdom Meets Supreme Technology. And within the next day or so, I'm going to start putting those verses there so that they can be accessible to everyone that is interested. It also says in the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science, the lower self is rich in promises, but poor in blessedness and peace. It offers pleasure, joy, and satisfying gain, but gives unrest, misery, and death. It gives men apples that are lovely to the eye and pleasant to the smell, but their cores are full of bitterness and gall. If you would ask me what to study, I would say yourselves, and you will have studied them. And then what you ask me to study next, I would reply yourselves. Now, in Buddhism, there's a saying that the flesh is never satisfied. So no matter how much we give into the flesh to make the flesh stop asking or demanding on us, sooner or later, the flesh is going to keep demanding again. So we have to overcome this genetic entity. We have to learn to master this physical body, which is our reactive mind. He says, he who knows well his lower self knows the illusions of the world, knows of the things that pass away. And he who knows his higher self knows Allah, knows well the things that cannot pass away. So it says in the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Any questions up to this point before we move on? Okay. Now here's a little excerpt from the religion called the Bahai. The name of their prophet, his name is Baha'u'llah. Here's what the Bahai believe in. First of all, their concept of science and religion. The Baha'is reject the notion that there is an inherent conflict between science and religion, a notion that became prevalent in intellectual discourse at a time when the very conception of each system of knowledge was far from adequate. The harmony of science and religion is one of the fundamental principles of the Baha'i faith, which teaches that religion without science soon degenerates into superstition and fanaticism, while science without religion becomes merely the instrument of crude materialism. Abdul Bahai has described science as the most noble of human virtues and the discoverer of all things. Science has enabled society to separate fact from conjecture. Further, scientific capabilities of observing, of measuring, of rigorously testing ideas have allowed humanity to construct a coherent understanding of the laws and processes governing physical reality, as well as to gain insights into human conduct and the life of society. So now what they're saying is that science not only can be used to deal with the outward manifestation of reality, but science can also be used to gain insights into human conduct, which is the science of the mind. Does that make sense? And if we look at this, the physical reality from the perspective of Dianetics could be dynamics number 5, 6, 7, and 8, the life dynamic, the mess dynamic, the theta dynamic or thought dynamic, and then the dynamic of God. And then when you deal with insights into human conduct and the life of society, is dealing with the first dynamic, the second dynamic, the third dynamic, and the fourth. So this one statement is implying that science can be used to cover all 8 dynamics. Does that make sense? Everyone with me so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So here's what the Baha'i believe. In man, there are 2 natures, yet again, in agreement. His spiritual or higher nature and his material or lower nature. In one, he approaches God. In the other, he lives for the world alone. Signs of both these natures are to be found in men. So what they're saying is God is in man as well as devil or the lower natures in men. Christianity. But I see another law in my members, warn against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. So the book of Romans, again, is talking about these 2 wars, the body versus the mind. And Jesus, being full of the Holy Ghost, returned from Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, being 40 days tempted by the devil. And in those days he did not eat, he did eat nothing. And when they were ended, he afterward hungered. And the devil said to him, and this is where you go into the 3 trials of Jesus. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has stated that the devil that he was speaking to was one in his own mind. In Closing the Gap, it says, we war not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places. He says the high places in your mind. The scriptures say Jesus went up on the mountain to pray, and there Satan tempted him. Well, where was Satan? Jesus went up, and in his attempt to reach higher levels of awareness of himself, he found a devil, a contrary thought or opposition. So every time we decide to make progress to go up, we have our own inner voice, inner demon that tries to hold us back. Our biggest adversary, our biggest obstacle, the biggest foot that is in our way is our own foot. We are our biggest problem. Then we go into Buddhism. First of all, we know that Buddha, the original Buddha, was a black man, but that's out there. Now, there's a book called the Dhammapada, which is one of the religious books of the Buddhists. It's like the Hadith of the Buddhists. It's a collection of the sayings. And Buddha was very big on observing nature and then extracting wisdom from the things he observed around him. He said, it's hard it is to train the mind, which goes where it likes and does what it wants. But a trained mind brings health and happiness. The wise can direct their thoughts, subtle and elusive, wherever they choose. There's a small little video clip. And this clip is from a movie called Little Buddha. And I remember why I saw this movie when it came out back in 1993. And this was pre-Matrix. So this right here is actually Keanu Reeves, who actually played Buddha in this movie. Good movie to watch if you decide to go back and find it. It's a very good movie about the history of the Buddha. And in this clip, basically, I'm just going to break down the symbolism very quickly. He comes face to face with Mara. Mara represents the reactive, in other words, the reactive mind, the evil side of self. And Mara represents the physical body. And Mara is always trying to get the Buddha from becoming enlightened, because then he would have mastery over Mara. So this is the eternal battle. This is what we call in Islam, this is the jihad that we're fighting against. In this clip, Buddha calls Mara the architect. Now, last week, we went into that concept of architect, which also means engineer, which in Arabic is sayakun. And we looked at Surah 50, ayat 16, I think, through 26, where it talks about every person has a driver and a witness. So it's talking about we have this driver within us, a sayakun, which is also translate into architect. And its job is to try to urge us off the straight path. So this clip represents a demo kit, we could say, a physical representation of the battle between the analytical mind and the reactive mind.
It seemed as if Mara had been defeated, but in fact, he had not yet given up the battle. Now he attacked again.
You who go where no one else will dare. Will you be my god, architect? Finally, I have met you. You will not rebuild your house again. But I am your house. And you live in me. O Lord of my own ego, you are pure illusion. You do not exist. The earth is my witness.
So just a small little clip. When Mara says, you live in me, Mara's saying, I'm the human body, you're the analytical mind, but you dwell in me, but I'm trying to rule you. And that's the same way we are today. Physical body is always trying to gain control over the mind. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna try to speed this up a little bit.
Yes, sir.
So in the Dhammapada, it says, is to see the connection between personal problems and their deeper cause. And with this comes the will to make changes in your life. So if we're looking at personal problems now, and we're looking at deeper causes, then we must be talking about what? If the problem is in the present, then the cause is where?
In the mind.
It's in the mind, but with regards to time. If the personal problem is in the present, then where's the cause?
In the past.
The cause is in the past, and then that allows us to make changes for what?
The future.
The future. So we have another cycle of action here. Start, change, stop. Past, present, future. Now, where in our teachings does it talk about the root of our problems being in the past?
In the lessons.
More specific.
Supreme wisdom.
A little more specific.
English lesson number C1.
Yes. Yes. Why does he like the devil? Because the devil put fear in him when he was a little boy. That's the deeper cause.
Mm-hmm.
Why does he fear now? Present tense, since he's a big man. Because the devil taught him to eat the wrong food. So this part of English C lesson number 1 is totally in harmony with the Dianetics with regards to our present day problems are rooted in what we ate in the past, eating meat being a metaphorical language. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now we have Hinduism. Now here, the Bhagavad Gita is a book that's full of metaphor and allegory. It's the historical battle portrayed in the historical battle portrayed in the Bhagavad Gita, he states, is an allegory of the inner conflict between man's base materialistic instincts and his innate yearning to attain the blissful spiritual consciousness of oneness with the divine. Now, a general overview of the Bhagavad Gita, you have a man named Arjuna who's about to go to war with his own family. He's in a chariot with Krishna, which is the incarnation of God in man. So one way of looking at this is Arjuna getting ready to go to battle against his family. In Dianetics, we go to battle against our family because we have to go to battle against the things that our family has done to us. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And when we suffer from dramatizations, who are we dramatizing? Our family. So on one level, Dianetic auditing is us going to war with the individuals from our past. Mm-hmm. Krishna, the spirit of God in man with Arjuna, represents, in the language of Islam, the self-accusing spirit. So this story is a metaphorical story actually dealing with what's going on inside the mind. Then it says, in a language of simile, metaphor, and allegory, the Bhagavad Gita was clearly written by sage Vyasa. That was the one they say actually wrote the Bhagavad Gita, by interweaving historical facts with psychological and spiritual truths, presenting a world painting or a picture or a facsimile of the tumultuous inner battles that must be waged by both the material and spiritual man. So here we're given this concept of the theta mess concept. So the battle was between the clan of the Pandu and the clan of the Kurus on the field of Dharmakshetra of Kurukshetra. Now, those are it's just based on the Indian language which is very difficult to speak. But those two words, when you actually clear them, they simply mean a battle between the mind and the body. But what they did was they hid the wisdom in the language. So you would read this and actually think this is a war that took place, yet this is a war that takes place every day because we're trying to fight mind against the body. So when you look at the Pandus and the Kurus, the Pandus, the translation is pure intelligence, which is another way of saying the analytical mind. And the Kurus, it translates to the wicked, impulsive mental and sense tendencies, which is describing the reactive mind. So we already know L. Ron Hubbard studied these ancient texts of Buddhism. He studied the Vedas, the Upanishads. He studied all those ancient texts. And what he did was, he did like the Holy Quran said. He was a person, and this part is my opinion, but he was a messenger raised from his own people speaking their language. So what language did he speak? He was speaking the language of science and mathematics and physics. And this is why when you read a lot of his books, he's talking a lot about physics and chemistry and mathematics. And that was the language that he used to talk to his people. But he got the tech from our ancient ancestors, the original people. The Purus are headed by Arjuna and Krishna, and we already said Krishna represents the self-accusing spirit. The Kurus are headed by the blind king and his son. The blind king's name, and I didn't put it here, but his name translates to one who controls the senses, and his son, the name is Duryodhana. It means one who's hard to control. So here we have a description of the reactive mind. When we are aberrated, when we are angry, when we are frustrated, we cannot control our senses. And out of our anger is something that's hard to control. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now, finally, we get to the last part, the Metu Neter, ancient Khemitic tradition. Now, when you look at this statue, what do you see anything? What do you see?
The head of an animal.
Mm-hmm.
Three.
You see three. You see heads of animals. Now, what some people believe, they believe that the ancient Egyptians or the ancient Khemitic people worship animals. That's because the original Black man knows how to hide his wisdom. This is why when we're amongst ourselves, we can speak. And then when people come around us and we don't want them to understand what we're saying, without even dropping a beat, we can change our language and we can talk a coded language that we all understand what we're saying, but those who are in our circle, they won't understand anything that we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then when that person leaves our circle, we convert our language back, but no one ever trained us how to do that. It's because the original man can use both sides of his brain. We can talk literal, but we can also speak in metaphors. Mm-hmm. So this right here is a picture where we could say the original people, they hid their wisdom because they knew someone was coming that wouldn't know how to translate pictures, because they take everything literally. So they think that Jesus turned water to wine. They really think that Jesus walked on water. They think that Jesus was born of an immaculate conception. They take things literally. So we hid our wisdom in plain sight. But when you get to the nuts and bolts of this, when you look at the right side of the statue, which would be our left, you have what's called Horus or Heru, which represents the analytical mind. And you have Set that's on the right side, which is the left side of the statue, which would represent the reactive mind. So here's how it translates. So you have Osa, Heru, and Set. So the one that stands in the center, that represents the center of awareness. That's the I that Dianetics talks about. And then you have the analytical mind and the reactive mind on both sides. So here's the science behind the Khemitic statues or the symbolism. First of all, Osiris is called the Lord of the Perfect Black. He's considered to be the father of the gods and represents eternal existence and immortality. He was the father of the gods that gave birth to all the other gods. Now, how does this correspond to the teaching of the Most High Elijah Muhammad? In Message to the Black Man, the Most High Elijah Muhammad teaches us that the first God that created himself from triple darkness is no longer present. However, his person exists today in you and I. So we can say on one level, the Osiris of the Khemitic tradition, the Lord of the Perfect Black, could possibly correspond to the God that created himself from triple darkness of the Holy Quran. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, sir.
You're going in, bro.
Praise be to Allah. Now we look at Horus or Heru. Horus was the brother of Set, and they went to war with each other to restore the North and the South. And in a moment, we're going to get into responding to your question, Sister Cheryl. We're building up to it right now. So restoring the North to the South, but it doesn't mean restoring the North and the South with regards to landmass. When Heru was fighting against Set one-on-one, it was a constant stalemate. They couldn't make any progress. It's kind of like what happens to us when we are trying to overcome our own inner demons, our own shortcomings. Some days we win and some days we lose. So there's like a stalemate. So what Heru had to do is Heru worked with Tahuti. Tahuti represents the god of writing. And together they defeated Set. This is like, Heru is like the pre-clear and Tahuti is like the auditor. And they're both working together to defeat the reactive mind and the engram. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is Set. He tricked Osiris and imprisoned him. Now, question, if Set represents the reactive mind and Osiris represents the center of awareness, how is this concept in the ancient Khemitic context of Osar imprisoning Osiris, how does that translate to Dianetics?
Well, if the reactive mind is strong enough, it can imprison us, that's for sure. That's off the top of my head.
Yes. I'm gonna give you a clue. Science of survival.
Okay. I'm trying to think. When we're low on the tone scale, that reactive mind have a lot of power over us, depending on where we are on the tone scale.
Yes.
Offhand, I can't answer your question the way I should be answering it.
But what? As soon as
Is that service facsimile?
A service facsimile, we could say that a service facsimile is like an excuse that we use to continue what we're doing. Like if we make a mistake, we might say, that's just the way I am, or that's how my father was. It's like he says, a justified thought. It's another way of saying a service facsimile. But there's a specific term I'm looking at as far as the center of awareness being imprisoned. And as soon as I say it, Sister Cheryl, you're gonna kick yourself.
I'm thinking engram, but
well, engram, that's what engram is.
Laka.
But specifically, we could say interbulated theta.
Interbulated theta. Okay.
Interbulated theta is the center of awareness that's trapped in. And when you look at the N theta and N mess, that is actually called an engram. So everyone is correct on that. So this same concept that's in Dianetics, we find it in the ancient Khemitic traditions as well. And Set is considered to be regarded as the origin of evil. Now, we could say everything that we do that is outside the scope of righteousness actually comes from or is rooted in our reactive mind. Could we agree with that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Now, this part, I'm gonna try to throw some stuff at you that I'm hoping that you've never seen before. Like the last class we did on mathematics, we went into the human anatomy and we found the numbers that were in the structures of the body and the heart. I hope to give you something that you haven't seen before, which will just add some more mass and some more energy to these presentations. But when you look at this headdress right here, you see right above the forehead, you have those two symbols. Can you see my pointer on the screen?
Yes.
You see these two symbols right here?
Yes.
The one on the one where I'm pointing at right here is a vulture, and the one on this side is a snake. One represents Upper Egypt, and the other represents Lower Egypt. Okay. Now, there's a significance between these two symbols on the forehead of King Tut's death crown or death mask. The vulture is called Nekbet. It represents the pineal gland. The snake is called Wajet, and it represents the pituitary gland. So when we understand the concept of what the pituitary gland and the pineal gland represent, the pineal gland represents access to the higher levels of spirituality. The pituitary gland is used with regards to the control of the body through the hormones. We have emotion, then we have effort, which is thought, emotion, and then the physical body. So when you see this, it's called collectively as a uraeus. When you see that on the headdress, it represents an individual that has mastered the spiritual aspect as well as the physical aspect of reality. It would be like the clear of their time period. Does that make sense? They have mastered the flesh as well as the spirit. So now we're going to look at what I call an anatomical demo kit. And for those who don't understand what a demo kit is, in Scientology, they have what's called the student hat, and it's a course in how to study. And part of that course, you take and you make a demo kit to represent the concept that you're studying. So here, you see the human brain, correct? Right here where my pointer is, this would be the pineal gland, the pituitary gland. And then back here is the pineal gland. Can you see that?
Yes.
This pineal gland produces a chemical that allows individuals to have spiritual experiences. It produces a chemical called DMT. The pituitary gland the pituitary gland over here is what helps build the bridge between the thought and the physical body. This right here is the brain stem. This is the medulla oblongata, and this is called the pons. This is all the brain structure. This part right here is a part that connects the right and the left hemispheres of the brain. Our ancestors knew about this concept of the brain thousands of years ago because they put it in the symbolism of the Eye of Ra. Here you have this vulture, which represents the pineal gland, which is why you have the wings here. You have the pituitary gland here. Oh, let me go back. You have the brain stem here, and this is the middle part. This is called the thalamus. This is the center part right here. And this piece right here, that's represented by what you see here. Does that make sense? This is the seat of emotion.
Yes.
And the whole point of Dianetics and the teachings is to master or rise above what? Our emotions. These two symbols represent mastery of the emotions, but the wisdom is hidden in symbolic form. Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
So these two kingdoms represent two technologies. So Upper Egypt, the pineal gland, is also called the epiphysis. And it just so happens that the word epi means above. This involves spirituality. This is where we produce what's called DMT. Now, if we fast for 3 days, as we are told in How to Eat to Live, Book 2, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that if he says, if you want to increase your spirituality, fast for 3 days. Now, here's an interesting concept with regards to fasting for 3 days. This chemical DMT will allow you to have spiritual experiences, but the body also produces another chemical that turns that chemical off. So you have a dichotomy of chemicals. There's another chemical that the body produces that keeps the DMT from working as it should. Guess how you turn that chemical off in order to let the DMT empower itself? You fast for 3 days. Another thing that we're taught in regards to fasting and DMT, that another way of turning that chemical off is by drinking coffee, which we're told in How to Eat to Live, that in between our one meal a day or one meal every 2 days, he allowed us to drink coffee, correct? So in the fasting and in the drinking of coffee, both of these things turn off the chemical, it's called monoamine oxidase, and allows DMT to increase to allow us to have spiritual experiences. Y'all still with me?
Yes, sir.
Lower Egypt is the pituitary gland, and it's also called the hypophysis. Hypo means beneath or low. It's the bridge between the endocrine system and the nervous system. This part of the system produces a chemical called ACTH. And as ACTH builds up in our system, it actually wears down our immune system. And ACTH is like a glue that keeps the engrams in place. Guess how we get rid of the ACTH? Through auditing. Because when we cry, ACTH leaves the body through the tears that we cry, the release of charge during auditing. Y'all with me? So our pathway to clear is the same as rising above emotion. So Set, now we're coming to the end now. Set represents the reactive mind. Heru represents the analytical mind. Set represents the various mental and emotional disorders. Heru represents misemotions that have been refiled as memory. So we still have the memory, but we no longer have the emotion that's connected to it. Set represents those that are rooted in abnormal chemistry and misunderstoods. And Heru represents cleared chemistry and understoods. So the two kingdoms represent two technologies. So the marriage of the two technologies, the supreme wisdom and the supreme technology, is symbolic of a modern reunification of Lower and Upper Egypt. It's like a modern day reunification of Osiris. It is the fulfillment of the previous scriptures. So the union of the two sciences have the ability to speed up the process of our maturation into God consciousness. The foundation of this wisdom, Dianetics, is from the original man. It all belongs to us. We just have to accept our own and be ourselves. Does anyone have any questions?
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
When you was talking about the pineal gland, the hypothalamus, is that symbolic of the story of Jesus when he was on the cross on the mount in between the two guys, Jesus being in the center, being the pineal gland, and on the side of him were the two guys on the cross, being the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland?
You know what? I'll have to study on that one. That sounds interesting. I've never thought of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Another question, when you were talking about all these different systems, would that be like in the Kabbalion where they dealing with the law of correspondence?
Yes.
Where if you're studying, see, it's like the example, it's one deity, but I can't come give you a water deity if you live in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't give you a desert deity if you live in the sky. But the energy is all the same. It all corresponds with each other. It's the same vibrational frequency.
Yes, and the way that Minister Farrakhan has said it, he says it like this. Same concept, just different language. He says, if side angle side of triangle A equal to side angle side of triangle B, then the two triangles are congruent.
Okay.
In mathematics, that's called the transitive law.
Okay.
Anyone else before we get ready to close out and head to the next Zoom meeting?
Yes, sir.
All right, Tina, go ahead.
The way it seems from your PowerPoint is that these different religions believe that man is God.
Yes.
And God is man. However, it seems like they believe it only exists within themselves. There's not a supreme being outside of themselves.
Well, I'll say it like this. The supreme being would represent the totality. So if I take a cup of water and I go scoop it out of the ocean is like the supreme being, the totality, and the cup of water represents a portion of that supreme being in a small vessel, a part of that. So when you look at the supreme being as a totality, that represents the eternal principle. So a part of that eternal principle exists in you and I, but because everything's for real, there can only be one person that sits in that seat. And in this day and time, that one person is Master Farrakhan Muhammad.
Yes, sir. So that's what I'm asking. Do you think that these higher spiritual religions believe in Master Farrakhan Muhammad?
I don't believe that they believe the way we believe, because that was given to us basically. So our job, as it says in the lessons, is to manifest this as the fulfillment of what they have. So as the minister has raised the name of Master Farrakhan Muhammad all around the world, then we have to just do the same thing. Because when you look at the prophecies, and maybe we'll do this at another time, but when you look at the prophecies of those religions, and this part is my opinion, I believe that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan represents the sum total of all those prophets that they're all waiting that would come in the last day. I believe that those are all summed up in one individual, and that's Minister Farrakhan.
Yes, sir.
That part is my opinion.
Okay.
Could someone post the Zoom information for the Closing the Gap for 8 o'clock? Just so individuals that want to go to the next Zoom meeting can just hit that I'm doing a commercial announcement for the Closing the Gap Zoom meeting at 8 o'clock. And someone could also put in the one for Brother Abdul Malik in case individuals want to go to fasting and prayer. I don't mind doing commercials for other people, because we all are striving to be with the one minister and the one God and the one representative. Yes, questions. Sister Barbara?
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Is this the same link for Wednesday morning at 10?
Yes, it would be it should be the same link, but I'm going to take everyone's email and put it in the list. So I will definitely make sure you get the link for Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. But everything should still be the same. Brother Who's that?
Peace.
Peace.
So when you was building on again about the pineal and the three, that kind of took me back to Supreme, to number 37 in the 1 through 40, where it says Allah is God in the earth and the heaven, and is just and true, and there's no unrighteousness in him, but he is not unseen, for he is seen and heard everywhere, for he is the all eye seeing.
Yes, sir.
So when he talks about Allah being God in the earth, which is the body, and the heaven, which is the mind, and is the all eye seeing, it's the same as Heru, Asar, and Set.
Teach, brother. Teach. Yes.
That's correct.
Yes, brother. I didn't catch that one either, but thank you for that, Jewel.
Peace.
Peace. Anyone else? Sister Deborah?
Yes, sir.
I see your screen lighting up. Did you have a question?
Well, a question, kind of, sort of, yes. Real quickly, when you spoke of the vulture and the snake, now the vulture to me brings up, you know, this really ugly bird and who's always searching for dead flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just trying to tie the two in with what you were saying.
Okay. Look at it from the perspective of how the symbols were used back then. When you look at the ancient Egyptians, they used the vulture as symbol of flying above, and the snake as two separate entities. But when you go to South America, when you deal with what's called Quetzalcoatl, Quetzalcoatl was the feathered serpent. So you have a serpent with feathers. So it's like in South America, they have the same concepts, but they combine them into one entity, whereas ancient Egypt, they had two separate entities. But the vulture, the symbolism here is represented on one level as that which flies above. Not necessarily a vulture from that which eats carrion or eats the dead. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
There's much more to the symbolism, but we're limited by time.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
Peace. Would the snake represent the rising of consciousness?
Yes.
Correct. Going up the back of the spine to the third eye.
The Kundalini energy.
Kundalini.
Yes.
But Kundalini, again, deals with correspondence, which comes out of India.
Mm-hmm. But all of it comes from the original man.
Peace.
Brother Lukman,
Yes.
is this the concept of the number 7? It's just people arrived at it with different ways, maybe 6 plus 1, maybe 5 plus 2, but it all, you know, we all have the 7, meaning that we all warring against what's inside of us, you know, trying to, I guess, accept our own and be ourselves, but go about it different ways. I'm trying to find a common denominator with all of them. You know, like people don't have to go all the whole process like, you know, those in the nation, but everybody have something in common where they are warring against the aberrated mind or the negative self or Satan within or whatever we want to call it, mm-hmm. to become ourselves, you know, our righteous selves. That's what I want to say. I guess is that because that's what I'm getting out of that.
Yeah, the more if you decide to study more about the different religious ideologies, the more you study, the more you're going to see, and the more you'll be able to tie things together.
Peace. The number 7 is God in all cultures.
Correct? Not necessarily. Not necessarily, and I'll tell you why. When you deal with mathematics, the number 7 represents a return to perfection. Mm-hmm. But the number 7, it can't represent God on that level, because from a mathematical standpoint, 7 is a number that's dependent upon other numbers for its existence. So if you have to choose a number that represents God, it would have to be the number 1, because really the number 1 is the only number that exists. All other numbers are dependent upon the number 1, but 1 can exist without all the numbers.
So would 7 be God in man?
We could say God, we could say the pathway to perfection, because you have 7 chakras. The number 7 is definitely a spiritual number, don't get me wrong. But to say that 7 represents God, we can't necessarily say that, because 7 is dependent. And if we use a number to represent God, that number also has to be independent. If there's no other questions, I know, did anyone post the link for the Zoom? Okay, so if you didn't write it down, write down the number for closing the gap, 986-475-4829. If there's no other questions, I look forward to seeing everyone on Wednesday morning for the mathematics. We're going to be hitting the problem book again from some different angles. And then I am going to go ahead and close out in prayer.
What time on Wednesday before?
Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. Now, if anyone has any,
Yes. Wonderful class.
Oh, praise be to Allah. Thank you, sister. So if individuals can't make the morning class, send me an email. Let me know what days and times are better for you, and I will try to adjust my schedule to accommodate your schedule, since my schedule is a little more flexible. So with that said and done, beloved family, thank you for your time and attention. Thank you for your support. I'm going to go ahead and dismiss myself as I came before us in the nation's reading words of peace and paradise. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
We'll go ahead and close out in prayer, and then whoever's interested, go ahead and make your way over to closing the gap. Attention prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment in which we now live. Thee alone do we serve, thine aid do we seek. Please, Allah, guide us on the straight path, the path upon whom thou hast bestowed favors, not the path upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor of those who go astray after hearing thy teachings. Ameen.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum, family.
Alaikum salam, Brother Lukman. That was awesome.
Praise
Thank
be
you.
to Allah.
Salam, sir. Thank you so much.
Sir. Thank you.
Beautiful class.
Yes, sir.